Thank you very much, Ian. Right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. I was looking forward to coming to see you in person, but obviously that's not going to happen at the moment. So it is a little bit like being back in the continuity suite. And I can enjoy sharing our various experiences with you, hopefully this afternoon. First of all, I just want to ask if everyone can hear me okay, because I know that I've got a bit of feedback coming back on me.
I've lost the picture.
Oh, you've lost the picture?
People that aren't muted. Yeah, you need to mute people.
I was muted, but I was getting feedback.
Yes, I thought, can everybody hear me? I'm not getting any feedback now, so if everyone can hear me.
Better.
That seems to be better.
That's better.
Everybody happy?
Yeah.
I'll just pretend you're all happy. I'll know if you're not, because either you'll be asleep or you'll have changed channels, which is something I am actually quite used to. So to begin at the beginning, first of all, as I said, thank you very much. And also, this is a little bit like continuity. I'm no longer a continuity announcer. I'm actually run a theatre company these days, but I still work quite a bit for the BBC. Although sadly, over the last year, the BBC has been very much online, as I'm sure you're all aware. And we've done a lot of rerunning of programmes and not made very many new ones just because of coronavirus. But let's look back in time to when I first started out, if that's okay with you. So I first started out when I left boarding school. I come from Somerset, actually, and I thought I wasn't very good at school. I'm not particularly clever, but I quite liked reading and I loved performing. So I thought to myself, I think actually I'll go to drama school and I'll just be very successful as an actor. Which is a given, isn't it? Yeah, of course it is. I left boarding school and I went to drama school, and I had 3 years at East 15, which in those days, although there's an East 15 in Southend now, there was an East 15 started out in Loughton. And it was quite an alternative school. I didn't really read the brochure when I applied. I was quite surprised to get in. And 3 years were spent. It's a funny place, East 15. You kind of discover yourself and you do a lot of method acting. And there's a fair amount of nudity as well, which was quite surprising for somebody who'd come from a very strict boarding school. So I got used to that and I got over it and decided I probably wanted to go into radio. Didn't really think I wanted to go into films. And I decided that I would become a famous radio performer. Well, it was obvious I was going to be, because I just knew I was going to be successful. I left East 15 and waited for the phone to ring. And in those days, of course, it wasn't like now. We didn't have the internet. Couldn't apply for a job on an email and get an immediate response. You bought the stage, which was a paper. You looked in the back, all the jobs were listed at the back, and then you answered those adverts, sent them off with a picture of yourself and a stamped addressed envelope, and waited to hear from somebody who was going to write to you and say, yes, you can have a part in this play. I got an audition, was very, very excited. And it did say that you needed to be able to juggle. Well, I mean, how hard can that be? Everyone could juggle, can't they? I didn't actually have any juggling balls, but I bought 3 apples, Granny Smith ones, because they were quite shiny. And I turned up at the audition ready to be a performer and get this large leading part, juggling away with my 3 apples. Didn't really think that I needed to do anything else. And the director said to me, can you do anything else? Can you do anything else juggling wise? I was like, well, I can juggle with standing on 1 foot. So I did that. And then he said, no, but you know, it clearly says in the advert, you need to be able to juggle with fire. Yeah. Oh, does it? Oh, no, I can't juggle with fire. So I didn't get that job. So I went back to my ordinary job, which was working in the box office at the Vaudeville Theatre, thinking I've got to get a radio job. I don't think I'm going to get a theatre job. So I applied for another job that was in the back of the stage, and that was a job for a co-presenter on Radio 1 breakfast show. Obviously, I know a bit about music. I mean, I bought a few records. I could hum a couple of Beatles songs at least. So I waited and I got a phone call from the controller of Radio 1 who invited me to audition. I auditioned for him and I got down to the final 2. I was so excited. I just knew that I was going to be a co-presenter on BBC Radio 1 at breakfast time. But I didn't get the job. And when I didn't get the job, the feedback was, and they were really lovely to me, but the feedback was, we really felt that you needed to know something about music. Oh. So I'm still waiting to be famous and I'm still thinking to myself, what can I do? So this is where I'm going to start sharing my screen with you, hopefully, if I can. And I'm going to start from the beginning and see whether I can show you. Oh, I don't want to show you that. You see, it's lucky that I'm not actually set up slideshow. No, I've already done that. Let's start.
Present online. That's it.
There we go. Right, so I really thought it was time I got a job with the BBC. So I applied for various jobs. Well, I went to World Service and I read the news as an audition. I didn't get that. And then I got a job on Radio 4 in a play. It was so exciting. I just knew I am absolutely going to become famous. It was obvious right from the word go. I told you I was going to be famous, and I was. I turned up at Broadcasting House ready to collect the script. It was a massive script. I said to the lady at reception, "Oh, my name's Sally Lawrence. I've come to collect my script." And she smiled at me and she said, "Which script is it?" I said, "Oh, it's Pelléas and Melisande." She said, "Well, there are about 200 of them over there. You'll have to go through them and find out which one's got your name on." So I was going through them and I finally found mine. So exciting. And I looked at the script. I flicked through it. Flick, flick, flick. I had 2 lines on the last page and they were, "Yes, yes, ma'am." I was the 3rd servant, but who cares? I was in a play. I thought, well, I'm not exactly going to be famous, but I'm going to get there. But unfortunately, it didn't really lead on to anything else. I got a few voiceovers, but nothing much. And I thought, I really am going to have to start boosting my career. So I decided I would try and be more of a broadcaster. So again, if I can share my screen with you, let's see where we get to here. So, well, I went from the BBC thinking, what shall I do next? And I couldn't quite decide what to do next. So I thought to myself, I know, I'm going to apply to AA Roadwatch. I don't know if any of you know of AA Roadwatch. In the old days, it used to do a lot of broadcasts across all the radio stations giving travel news, and I became a travel presenter. So I used to log in the morning at about 6 o'clock, and I might be doing Essex travel. So I might say, "Good morning and welcome to AA Roadwatch. This morning, it's pretty busy on the M25. If you're travelling on the anti-clockwise carriageway, you may come across 1 or 2 delays around junction 29. On the clockwise road," and it would go on like that. And then in the end, I'd sign off saying, "Sally Lawrence, AA Roadwatch." From there, somebody I knew had listened in, and it was in the old Essex radio, and they asked me if I would do a music programme, love songs between 10 and 2 on a Sunday night. Well, as you know, I didn't actually get the job with Radio 1 because I don't know much about music. So I said to them, I don't really think I'm very good at music programs. And they begged me to take it because they were very short-staffed, not because I was any good. So I did take it. And from that, I also got a job doing The Flying Eye in between when the regular presenter was on holiday. Now, I don't know if any of you remember The Flying Eye. Used to fly over Essex, particularly around the Southend area. I would drive to Stansted Airport, get into a little plane with well, Captain Chaos was my first pilot. Captain Chaos was great fun, had a great sense of humour. He would fly me all over Essex and I would report, and I would literally be looking down at the road layout saying, well, if you're traveling on the M25 this evening, it's running very, very smoothly, nothing to report so far. And I can tell you that traffic is running really easily. And then the presenter would come back to me and go, Sally, are you sure? Are you really sure? Because actually, we've had loads of reports saying there's a massive accident on the M25. Really? And I would look at Captain Chaos and say, were we over the M25 just then? And he'd say, no, we're over Colchester Zoo. I was just mucking about. Colchester Zoo has a very similar layout to the M25 from the sky. So that would be some of my experience of the flying eye. I flew with 3 other pilots, Ben and also Bing. Bing was an unusual pilot. He was very nice and very friendly, but he had a strange problem with his leg, which meant that he was unable to change the fuel switch, which meant that when you were sitting down next to him, you had to lean over him, very difficult area, very precarious, lean right over to the bit where the pedal was and flick the switch. I'm not actually sure that you really had to do that, but whoever you were sitting next to him, he always made you change the switch for the fuel. And one was always very worried that the fuel might run out, so you didn't want to argue with him. I carried on working for AA Roadwatch, and I also carried on doing some Essex radio. I did a little bit of BBC radio as well. I did a health, leisure and consumer programme down in Brighton and also in Bedford in Luton. But I wasn't really feeling that I was getting what I needed to get. I thought, do you know what? I really, really need to get a proper job. A job that people can actually say, oh yeah, she is famous. She's doing what she told us she would do. It wasn't really about being famous, actually. It was just about having a good job. In the back of the stage one afternoon, when I was reading it on a Thursday, there was an advert for a new television channel, Channel 4. I'd never really heard of it. I didn't actually watch much television. I was usually working, but this particular job was looking for a continuity announcer. Continuity announcer, what's that? Somebody who tells you what's coming up on television. So if you haven't got a copy of the Radio Times or you haven't got the newspaper to hand, the person who says what's coming up next is your guide, if you like. So I applied for that job and it said you had to have good writing skills. So I wrote, shall I compare thee to the BBC? Thou art more brilliant and more contemporary. And I went on using that particular sonnet and I was called for an audition. Now, I don't know what you know about continuity announcing, but certainly at Channel 4, when I first started there, Channel 4 ran to time by a computer, which basically meant if you didn't get the timing right, you got cut off. So you could be halfway through a sentence and that was the end of your sentence. You just got cut off. So you had to be timed absolutely perfectly. Now that was okay because I was used to speaking to time on the radio and for AA Roadwatch, so I thought that'll be fine. But in those days, stopwatches were terribly expensive and I really couldn't afford one. So I thought, oh, I've got to make sure that the script I write is timed properly. How am I going to do that? Well, a very good friend of mine had given me, because they didn't want it, a microwave. I didn't really see why they didn't want it, but I was very grateful for it. And this particular microwave at the top had a digital clock. Excellent. I could time myself. So every day leading up to my audition, I said my script and I pressed the timer to make sure that the timing was right. So I knew 10 seconds, a minute, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, all of it on my script, perfect. So I arrived at my audition with my script and I read it out. And I remember the editor, Steve Jelly, saying to me afterwards, yeah, we really like your voice, but your timing is so off. I was like, well, I don't understand. What do you mean it's off? Well, it's really out. Like you'd have been cut off so often. I said, no, that can't be right. He said, well, did you use a stopwatch? I said, no, I didn't. I used the microwave. He said, I beg your pardon. I said, I used the microwave because I didn't have a stopwatch. I used my microwave. And they thought that was brilliant for some reason. So they gave me the job. However, when I was discussing with my friend who'd given me the microwave, that I'd used the microwave and it wasn't quite right, they said to me, well, no, obviously, that's why I gave it to you, because it doesn't really work. The timer's completely wrong and hasn't worked for ages. So I got the job at Channel 4 and it was incredibly exciting. It was a new channel. It was really fun. It was full of really exciting and fantastically artistic people and great programs. They didn't have that much going on at the beginning because they were very new. So you had a chance to maybe write a script for a couple of minutes, introducing things at the beginning. Can you imagine talking on BBC or Channel 4 or Channel 5 now for a minute? Everybody would be flicking and switching it over. But of course, you have to remember that in those days, not very many people had remote control. They usually had somebody who was about 5 that they paid 6pence to go and cross over and change the channel for them. So I had the opportunity of learning to write scripts and speaking to time. And it was a really brilliant experience. And I did a lot of night shifts at Channel 4. So I would go into work at 10 o'clock at night and finish at 10 in the morning over the weekends. It was quite a tiring shift. So I often just used to go in pajamas and a coat and take an outfit to wear for the morning. And I used to have a driver, Stan, used to come and pick me up, and he had a stretch limo. And I used to, he wore a uniform. He was very lovely. He used to knock on the door and with his uniform on, and I'd get into the back of the stretch limo in my pajamas with my bag and go off to work. And then one day, I don't know if any of you remember the Budgeons in Hamlet Court Road, but it was I loved that Budgeons. It was the only supermarket I'd ever been to which had carpet on the floor. Anyway, I digress. I was pushing my trolley around Budgeons and I bumped into a neighbour who was a bit sort of standoffish with me. I thought, gosh, I wonder why she's so standoffish with me. Anyway, she just said hello and walked on. And then the next week, I was getting into the car with Stan and I had my pajamas on, and she was looking out of the window and I waved and she turned away from me as if she was sort of very put out. And I thought, that's odd. Wonder what's going on there. And the week afterwards, I met her again in Budgeons and I said, look, Olive, I wonder if I could just ask you, have I done something wrong? She said, no, it's entirely up to you what you do in as your job. I don't want to make any comments at all. I said, what do you mean you don't want to make any comments? No, you must do as you feel fit. It's just that the neighbours and I, we have been talking. And I said, I don't understand. What have you been talking about? Well, that stretch limo that collects you and your pajamas. And I realised, of course, that they didn't think that I worked for Channel 4. They thought that I was perhaps a lady of the night. So I had to put them right. The stretch limo is just something that Channel 4 sent for me, and it happens to be his car. It's not a big deal. And so from then on, I always wore trousers and a coat and made sure that I looked like I was properly dressed because I didn't want any more of that nonsense. So that was Channel 4 and it was great. I loved Channel 4. It was really fun. And I used to go home sometimes and I'd see people at home and I'd say, oh, I'm working on Channel 4. And they'd all go, particularly the ones in Somerset. Never heard of it. We don't watch Channel 4. We only watch the BBC. Oh, okay. And my aunt particularly used to say to me, I don't watch Channel 4. It has adverts and I don't like adverts. Yeah. Of course, it would be different if you were at the BBC. We'd all watch then. So I thought, right, I better get a job at the BBC because I've always desperately wanted my family to approve of what I do, as I was the only person who went to drama school and I was the only person who didn't have a proper job. So I applied to work at the BBC and I got down to the shortlist and I finally got an interview. Now, the BBC do this thing called a BBC board. So they don't just have 1 or 2 people in the interview. They have about 25 and they're all very scary and they all sit in front of you and they ask you questions which you don't know the answer to. And it's really, really terrifying. I managed to get through it and I thought, oh, I'm never going to get this job. And I got a phone call out of the blue saying, hey, we'd really like you to come and start work for us. So I left Channel 4. I was sad to leave Channel 4 and I said goodbye to them and still got some friends there. It's all very nice there, but it was time to move on and move forward. And I want you to remember that word, move forward, because if you remember, I said that Channel 4 was all computerized. So when I moved forward to the BBC, I thought that would be, computerized at least, but it wasn't. What happened was you got given one of these, and also you got given a notepad, and you wrote your notes for your script in your notepad with your pencil. And then you took your notepad to the secretary and she typed it up for you and gave it back to you typed up. Then you took it to the photocopying room and you photocopied it 5 times. And then you took it to your read through and gave it to the editor and to the director and to the assistant editor. And then they went through it going, no, you can't say that. Oh, you can say that. And it would usually be something like, this is BBC One. And then you would go and rewrite it in your notepad with your pencil and take it back to the secretary. He would type it up again, and then you'd go back to the photocopier, and then you'd go to your script, read through again, and then you would go on air. So the BBC had, at that time, they weren't 24 hours. So you would turn up for work at 5:30 in the morning. You'd put your CFAX music on and you'd line up your slides. Then you would do your good morning. Then you would introduce the news. Then you would long for the trolley to arrive, and a lovely lady by the name of Nancy would arrive with coffee on a trolley, which you really needed at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then you would work until 1. If you were doing a middle shift, you'd work from 1 until 8. And if you were doing a middle shift on BBC 2, you would work from 1 until midnight, but you'd have some time off in the middle. And if you were doing a late shift, you would work from 6 until close down. And who remembers close down? We don't really have a close down now, but we used to have a close down, and used to, as an announcer on BBC One, you would play the national anthem. You would, before the national anthem, you would say, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been great having your company. Just before we go, we just want to remind you to switch off your fires and all the other things you've got plugged in. And also we would play a PIF, a public information film. Who remembers those? About not leaving old fridges in your back garden in case somebody climbs into one, and not opening the door in case there's a mad axeman outside, and various things like that. Those public information films were very much a part of it. And the engineers used to say, make sure the public information, give a really long introduction to the public information film. And if you gave a very long introduction to the public information film, it meant that the time went past midnight. So the engineers were able to claim another 15 minutes of pay, and they loved you for that. And it was always worth keeping on in with the engineer. And I should also tell you, all engineers at the BBC are called Dave. It doesn't matter what their real name is, but they are all called Dave, I promise you. So BBC One and BBC Two were very exciting places to be, but they weren't the only exciting places to be, because of course there was the Open University. Now the Open University runs in a slightly different way now, but when I was there, the Open University, BBC One and BBC Two, was very much run on a sort of shoestring up on a little area way away from the other continuity suites. And BBC One and BBC Two, Open University, were in the same room. And it was a room probably about the size of the room I'm in at the moment, with a desk similar to the one I'm sitting on, and with, who remembers these? Do you remember these? Yeah, I can see some people smiling. Yeah, and this actually says BBC Knowledge. And this is an original, this is one of the tapes that I had to put in. So I want you to please indulge me and imagine that I am sitting at my desk. BBC One is there, BBC Two is there, and they are VHS recording machines. And I have to put the tapes physically into them. And then I've got a chair that does this. So I'm over here and I'm saying, good morning and welcome to BBC One. Our Open University programmes begin shortly. And then I put some music on. And then I'm over here and I'm opening up this. This is BBC Two, where our programmes for the Open University and science begin shortly. And then I'd come back to the middle and then I'd be, oh, I'm over here. And I'd have to press a button that would play the tape. Now, in those days, it was quite important to be just right with the timing, because unlike now, where you can get stuff on demand, people used to set their recording machines because they didn't want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning or indeed stay up until 12 at night. So they would set their recording machine so it would record the program. So it was really important that we put it out properly. And oh my goodness me, the stress of making sure that you get it out on time. So imagine on a cold winter's weekend at 5 o'clock in the morning, as you turn up into the continuity suite and it's cold, and you turn all the lights on, and the only thing you have for company are the two pigeons that are up to no good on that window out there and making a lot of noise. And it's not a soundproof window. So just before you open your microphone to make the announcement, you have to bang on the window to stop the pigeons doing whatever it is they're doing and making all that noise. Then you introduce it. Then you bang on the window again before BBC Two, and then you introduce that. And then you put your programs out. Now, it's not unknown. I'm very pleased to say that I didn't do it, but it's not unknown for people to put the wrong science on BBC One when it should be on BBC Two, and art on BBC One when it should be on BBC Two. And so we would often have situations where we have the wrong tape on, and we had to work that out, because you wouldn't want to wake up in the morning and find that the course that you were doing had suddenly become an art course when you were actually studying science. So you have to be incredibly careful. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, it can be quite difficult. Some of my colleagues were famous for falling asleep. And the BBC have a special, their desk, which has faders on for opening and closing. They had faders that opened that way, so that if you collapsed and went to sleep, you couldn't close the faders as you collapsed. You kept them open. That's always a good thing to know, isn't it? I feel. So once I'd got used to working at the BBC, I was also able to do BBC World Service, which was another, originally it used to be BBC Europe and BBC World Service, then it merged into one. BBC World Service on television meant that you often did BBC Asia, so you were several hours ahead, and you had to, you worked a very long shift. It was 12 till 12, and you only had a half an hour break, but it was a good shift because it was fascinating to work with people from different countries and to be able to get used to the time difference, and also to learn pronunciation. Pronunciation can be quite challenging. I don't know how you feel about pronunciation. I'm not actually that great at some of it. And so I had quite an involved relationship with BBC Pronunciation. Now, they were a company that you could ring up, picked up the phone, and you could ring them up and you could say, I can't really pronounce this word. Could you just run it by me? And I used to ring them up all the time. And in the end, I became very good friends with them. And actually, they said to me, and it's pretty good advice, I think, if in doubt, leave it out. And I used to have to do that most of the time. So my announcements when there were difficult words would be, this is BBC Two. Thank you for watching BBC One, where our programme now begins. And I never ever mentioned anything about the names. And that way then it wasn't a problem for me, and it wasn't a problem for BBC Pronunciation. So I had great fun at the BBC, but there were some memorable moments. Before we leave the Open University, I think I should share my friend's experience. Manju Mali, who's now a celebrity chef, actually, she was an announcer with me. And we were on duty at the same time together. I was on BBC One, she was on BBC Two, and we just had a chat together, just had a coffee because we were on long programmes. And a very nice cleaning lady had come in to do the OU, because they came in at the weekends. She'd come in to do the cleaning, and she'd said, was it okay if she came in? I went back down to BBC One, and she said, yeah, of course. The next thing I knew is I was looking at my screen, and I could also see the screen for BBC Two, and I thought, gosh, it's gone off air. That's always a big worry. Gone off air? Why is it gone off air? And then Manju came running in. She said, the whole of OU's gone off air. I don't know what to do. All the engineers flying up there, everybody in a major panic. And the cleaning lady, lovely lady, said, do you know what? I'm going to come back and clean after this is all over. She pulled out the plug of the Hoover and put the other plug back in. And suddenly the whole of the Open University was back on air. And that is true. After that, they changed the system So there was more than one plug so that we could never lose power to the OU again. So there were some really fun times there, and there were also some quite serious times. We had some difficulties. There was an IRA bomb when I was there, which was quite scary and frightening, as you can imagine. And of course, we also had the very important, and I expect you're aware of it now because I know that sadly Prince Philip isn't very well. So we had to practice obit procedure, because it's very important to make sure that you get it right. So we would practice at a weekend. It was always awful if you looked on your rota and you saw that you were down for obit procedure, because it usually meant that you would be there for ages and all the reporters would be around the BBC TV centre area, and we'd have to work with them, and it would be cold and miserable, and you'd have to make the announcement. So I would do, sometimes it would be the Queen, sometimes it would be the Pope, sometimes it would be the current Prime Minister, occasionally it would be Prince Charles, maybe Prince Edward or Prince Andrew, and sometimes it would be the Queen Mother. But it was never, ever, we never practiced Diana, Princess of Wales. So it was a great shock and an incredibly stressful day when I got up on the Sunday morning, ready to go in to do my early shift on the bank holiday weekend in August. And I had two small children at the time, and they were non-sleepers. So my husband was enjoying watching Barney with them at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was getting dressed when there was a knock at the door, and it was the driver to say, "We need to go now. We've really got to get in." So we left, he drove very fast. My editor was on the phone saying, "Get in here as quickly as you can. We need everybody on all hands on deck." I arrived at Television Centre. At the time, they believed that Diana, Princess of Wales, was still alive, and there was a report that she had walked from the car to the ambulance, although we got the information pretty much straight after that to say that that was not true and that very sadly she had died. So we went into full obit procedure. But of course, none of us had practiced for this particular event, although we had some idea of what to do. So in the continuity suite, I was the announcer, and I became the announcer for the whole of the UK. So we share announcing. So we have, we call them nations. So there's Scotland, Wales, Ireland. Then we've got Bristol, you've got Manchester, but also Norwich as well. So what happens is there's a small button on your desk, which it contacts all the nations. So I pressed the button and said, "This is BBC London calling all nations," to which they come back and go, "This nation, Bristol, Wales, Scotland, wherever." And then you say, "We'll be doing a slow fade to black where you will all join us so that we can come together to make the announcement about the death of Diana, Princess of Wales." So you wait for them to go, so the programme goes dark, so it fades slowly down, very subtly down, dark, and then as it comes up, it just says BBC. Doesn't say anything else, doesn't say BBC One or BBC Two, it just says BBC. And then I made the announcement that there was an important news flash, and then we crossed over to the newsroom, and that was when the announcement was made. And of course, it was a very sobering and actually a very emotional time, and very stressful. I thought to myself, well, okay, I've done that. So I've done an obit, probably don't need to worry about that anymore. But no, how stupid was I? Because I happened to be on duty on the same day that, very sadly, the Queen Mother died. So I had to do it all over again. So, but at least I knew roughly what I was doing, and it wasn't quite as stressful. But it is a very stressful moment when you open the microphone and you have something important that you have to deliver. Equally as important as when I had to read the news, because news and sport had a massive row. So if I just set the scene, I'd like you to imagine two very difficult parents going through quite an emotional divorce and a small child in the middle of it. So sport is one parent and news is another parent, and presentation is the small child. I work for presentation. On a Saturday afternoon, golf, I don't know, can I see a hand raised of anybody who likes golf? No, very few people. Okay, well, golf can be lovely, but it can also be quite long, convoluted, ongoing, and running over, and all other programs suspended because of it, because it's super exciting apparently. And doing golf on a Saturday afternoon on BBC Two is not the shift you want to be given. However, lucky me, I had that shift on that particular afternoon, and my director, Pauline, said to me, right, okay, I've finished my shift now. Jonathan's taking over, and you'll be going to news at 6 o'clock. I've sorted it all out with sport. So there you go. So news come on and they say to Jonathan, the new director, we're ready for news at 6. Is that okay with you, presentation? Yeah, that's fine with us. And then suddenly sports say, no, we're not coming off. This is far too exciting. Really? This is just so exciting. It stopped raining now and we're going to do some other golfing thing. I don't know, like hit it onto a green or something. It's really, really exciting. We're not leaving. So Jonathan, the director, goes, well, actually, sport, you have to leave because we have to hit the news at 6 o'clock. Listen, Prez, we're not leaving. News hear this and they go, right, fine, we're not doing the news then. No news, we need you to do. No, we're not doing it. So there's a big row going on between news and between sport, and presentation are trying to sort it out, when suddenly at my door, Martin Lewis, newsreader, turns up and hands me a piece of paper, which is called a rip and read. They print it out, rip it off, and you read it. There you go, he says. Good luck. I'm not doing it. So I've got my piece of paper and my heart is going, and I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh. And Jonathan says to me, it'll be fine. And by the way, you've got to do the weather as well. Oh, okay. So I've got rip and read, and I've got the weather. And we have a little box on the continuity desk, which you press once and it changes your slide. Now, you can tell because you saw me trying to share the screen. I'm not very good at it. I certainly wasn't very good at it that day because I was nervous. So there's my finger and it's doing that. And I'm waiting and waiting. And suddenly it cuts to continuity. I've got my microphone and I've got my first slide for the news. And I start to read the news and I know that I've got to change the slide and my finger's shaking so much I press and accidentally press twice. And the next thing you know is 24 hours worth of BBC slides are being shown. Doom, 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 just going on. And in my earpiece, because I wear an earpiece for this, in my earpiece, Jonathan, the director, I hear him say to the assistant director, oh my God, what has she done? And then I hear, just carry on reading, Sally, it'll be fine. And I'm reading the weather over the test card, because that is the final one. And my heart is going and it's just horrendous. And then at the end of it, we go to a piece of program and sport ring up and go, that was a catastrophe. And news ring up and go, we won't be doing that again. And my editor rings me and goes, you won't be doing that again, will you? No, I won't. So that was the only time I read the news and I was grateful. I'm not a newsreader. I don't do big words, as I told you, with BBC pronunciation. And in that particular situation, I couldn't leave out the big words, otherwise there would have been nothing to say. So those were just some of the experiences that I'd had at the BBC. I moved on from the BBC and I went into BBC training and I worked with the training department. I worked coaching presenters vocally, and also I've been doing quite a bit of film coaching as well and working with them on and off. Although, as I say, right back at the beginning, there hasn't been a great deal. I've done some online presenting work for them, but not much because of coronavirus. So that was my experience. My continuity caper. Thank you for not falling asleep and for looking engaged in it. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask, I can't answer anything about the BBC licence fee. Just letting you know that now. I can't answer that. And do you know what? Strangely, when I do this talk, That's nearly always what I'm asked. But I can answer other questions if you want me to, and I know the answer, I will tell you. So please feel free to unmute and ask me, but don't feel obliged, because I know it's hideous of you me to ask something.
Has anybody any questions?
Yes, I have. You have a beautiful speaking voice. I have noticed lately that the continuity announcers do not have beautiful speaking voices, and you say you coach people to do that. I just wonder why there's such a dramatic change.
Right. Well, I'll be really honest with you. And it's funny because I often get asked this question. When I was working there, the reason that I left and moved on was because they didn't like my voice. In the end, they said that it was they just wanted me to have an accent or not to speak in the way I speak. And I had to make that choice. Did I want to change my voice, or did I just want to carry on? So a friend of mine who worked in the training department said to me, oh, look, come and work with us and train some of these. So I work for, I've recently been training somebody in Singapore, a presenter over there. So I don't train continuity announcers, and it's just the fashion. They don't like voices like mine anymore. They're not fashionable, unfortunately. And that has made a big difference to the amount of work I've been able to get. But that's life, isn't it? You have to move on, and you either adjust with the times. I could have changed my voice if I wanted to, but I just felt it wasn't really me. So I just wanted to just be me, kind of either like it or don't like it. But I agree with you. I have to say, I find some of the voices a little bit difficult to understand.
Earlier in your presentation, you did a good bit of Somerset, though.
I know, but Somerset's I love Somerset. I'm from Somerset, but it's not a popular accent. And so it's about fashion, isn't it? Lots of accents are popular and some aren't, and Somerset's not. Although it's got a lovely gentle sound to it, it's probably not a continuity announcer's voice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yes, lovely. Sorry. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that, and it was amusing as well. So thank you very much indeed for that, Sally. One thing I would say, I was very interested to hear you say that there was somebody on tap with regards to pronunciation, because, okay, I'll come clean. I used to teach German for many years. And I also, when we lived in the Middle East, I used to do some continuity just because the situation was such that women weren't able to come out anymore because of the terrorist situation. I was asked to do some, which I found was fascinating. It was lovely. However, one of the things that has driven me to distraction is the terrible mispronunciations. I think it was last night or the night before, I can't remember which, on Sky Arts, there was a young lady there doing continuity, and she paused, and it was very obvious she had no idea what she was going to say. And out she came with Beethoven. And I just thought, well, I'm sorry, but that's inexcusable. It really is. And it just seems that these standards, and I'm going to sound like a grumpy old woman now, but these standards are becoming lower and lower, as opposed to trying to bring everybody up. And this goes back to what we were saying just now also about accents and things. It seems to be far more accessible and far more acceptable to have a regional accent and perhaps slur your words. And the other thing is there is a number now that has got something about INGs. We don't get writing, we don't get reading, we get reading, writing. And you just think to yourself, well, isn't that rather sad, because English is such a beautiful language that it's all just going downhill? I feel it's going downhill. Maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think it's very difficult, isn't it? So in fact, as far as I'm aware, the pronunciation unit isn't there anymore. I think it was a cost cutting. They had to, I mean, this was a long time ago, and I have to be also honest, the pronunciation unit, I never found terribly helpful. I mean, I literally used to sometimes be close to tears with some of the words that we used to have to do. I couldn't understand the way they were suggesting we say them. I think it's very difficult, isn't it? Because everything needs to be inclusive. And so therefore we all want, it's important that as we move forward in society, we make everybody feel part of everything, and that nobody feels sort of, I don't know, disadvantaged. I think possibly the issue is that currently the fashion is such that they think anybody can do the job, but ultimately it's a little bit like saying anybody could do be a plumber. You can, but only if you've been trained. So I think that there needs to be perhaps we need to embrace some training and understand that, you know, accents are great, but they're only great if you can still understand, if there is a clarity of diction, perhaps. But it's a difficult one because currently it's incredibly fashionable, and I am very out of fashion. My voice is very out of fashion. So that is the way it is, and it's been like that for several years.
Thank you very much. That explains a lot, shall we say. It's the current mode, shall we? I think it is
the current mode, but also that is, I mean, in a way, in lots of ways, that's very good that we're embracing and inclusive rather than alienating people. But perhaps there needs to be on this. Perhaps it needs to be, to use one of those really fantastic phrases, a level playing field where there's something for everybody.
As opposed to tokenism, yeah. And I think without any doubt, it is this fact that if people are listening to you, you're actually imparting something to them that they need to know or they wish to know. But if it's not clear and it's not correctly pronounced, it's very difficult. It's got nothing to do with the accent. It's the fact that it's just mispronounced.
Yes.
My fetish. Thank you.
Yes. Did somebody has put, they raised their hand. Ruth, did you want to ask something?
Please, Sally. That was excellent. Thank you ever so much, Sally. If the job comes up for Desert Island Discs, will you apply, please?
Gosh, yeah. Will you second
really
me?
Annoys
Will you
me.
write my reference?
Well, yeah, definitely.
I'd love to do that. The trouble is, I don't think that job, all these jobs, they're all, it is a lot about who you know and being in the right place at the right time.
Really?
Yeah.
Really.
But if you want to write in and put my name forward, I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I'd love to, because I've always loved Desert Island Discs, but I don't at the moment. So I would love you to do it because I think you've got a lovely voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't think, are there any other?
Just one, it's not really relevant except to the beginning of your presentation. When you were at East 15, was Joan Littlewood still active, or had she?
No, I was at East 15 with, it was run by Maggie Berry, who had been, she had been the wardrobe mistress for Joan Littlewood's East 15 in Stratford, and then she had left that and started the acting school East 15, and it had been, Joan hadn't, as far as I'm aware, Joan as a practitioner and Joan's ideas were translated into East 15, but she never actually taught or did anything or had anything to do with the forming of that drama school. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, and I have to say, probably in hindsight, if I had, I probably wouldn't have gone to East 15 because it was a fantastic education, but it was 3 years of a complete shock, having come from a very strict Church of England boarding school to something that was incredibly wild and the like I'd never seen, you know. So I think probably it was initiation by fire, and I probably would have been better off at Central or Lambda or RADA, but I just sort of decided.
You fancied going to Loughton, that's what. yourself?
I did. Well, actually, do you know what? Again, if I'm really honest, my brother brought me up, and he said to me when I became 18 that I had to go to a secretarial school because I had to learn a skill. And I went to a secretarial school for an interview. It was in Hyde Park, and she said, the lady said, you can't wear stockings, and you can't go up the main stairs, and you can't have painted nails, and I just thought, oh my God. So I rang up all the drama schools to see if I could get in, and the only one that was still taking people was East 15. So I went over to East 15 and got a place and came back and said, I'm going to drama school. And my brother said to me, pack your bags and get out.
Well done.
And I did. So there we go. But yeah.
Any more questions? Any more? Well, thank you very much, Sally.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely to meet you all, and I wish you all much safeness, and let's hope that maybe this time next year we can bump into each other quite literally in Lee Broadway or down on the seafront and enjoy.
There is one more question. You mentioned that you are now in theatrical production.
Yes.
Where do you do your plays when we can go to the theatre again?
Well, that's interesting, because if I'm just applying for an Arts Council grant, if I get that, I will be contacting you, Ian, to ask if I can do a Zoom performance for you all, because we need a forum to it's this particular play, 4 plays about Essex myths. One is about the lady in grey at Hadley Castle. One is about the King of Bling, the Saxon king. One of them is about body snatching, and one of them is about smuggling. I've done some. I run some of the plays up at Belfair's Woodlands Trust. We've been doing shows there, but unfortunately, of course, we haven't been able to do last year. That was all cancelled. And I used to use the Dixon at the Palace, but again, I'm not really sure whether the Dixon will be in a position to open in the near future because of the COVID issue. In order to make it COVID safe, you have to have fresh air running through, and the Dixon doesn't really have that. It has a fire escape, but because it's attached to the back and it's a black box theatre, it's difficult. So yeah, we're doing alternative venues.
Very interested in that because we've got a very strong theatrical interest group.
Great.
What goes to plays, as it were?
Well, you can have the play for nothing as long as you are happy to watch it and then give us a bit of feedback. Yes, only sure. Nice feedback, though, because I don't like bad at criticism. I'm really bad at criticism.
I'm sure we can get you an audience.
Okay, well, I'll hold you to that. That would be great. So fingers crossed that I get the Arts Council grant, because currently that's quite a challenge in itself. So
yeah, but I've applied for those.
Yeah, they're difficult, aren't they? Wow.
We Lee Folk Festival, we didn't succeed. So yes, they're difficult.
They're really difficult because I often don't know what they're really looking for. I think what they're looking for is somebody who's brilliant at filling out applications. It's not about what you're bringing to the table. It's about whether you can tick all those boxes. But just call me a cynic.
Anybody else? No. Thank you very much, Sally.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.